the documents on page 7 that any senator wishes to speak to. Senator Billick.
Thank you, Mr Acting Deputy President. I wish to speak tonight on the Australian Government response to the Senate Select Committee on the National Broadband Network.
Senator Billick.
Thank you. I rise to speak on the Government's response to the interim report of the Senate Select Committee on the National Broadband Network. The committee, in its report, pointed out that the Government's strategic review of the NBN relies on the flawed and distorted assumptions in NBN Co's revised outlook. These include inflated assumptions of the cost of fibre deployment and delays to the rollout schedule, pessimistic revenue assumptions for Labor's NBN, and failure to account for the higher operating expenditure and reduced revenue that would arise from the Government's second-rate network. The committee quite sensibly recommended that NBN Co submit a revised strategic review that provides transparent assumptions and corrects distortions and deficiencies. The committee also recommended that the NBN Co take account of the costs of upgrading the multi-technology mixed network in the future, and the committee recommended that the review should be independently scrutinised. The committee made 3 other recommendations: that NBN Co accelerate the fibre to the premises rollout while further analysis is undertaken, that governance processes between NBN Co and the Minister be investigated to determine how a document with the deficiencies of the strategic review was produced and signed off by the NBN Co board and the Minister, and that the Senate amended the committee's terms of reference to enable ongoing and robust parliamentary oversight of the NBN. The Government rejected all 4 recommendations of the committee with barely an explanation, and this response is completely unacceptable. It shows that this Government will do whatever they can to avoid any independent scrutiny of their plan to hobble the Australian economy by delivering second-rate broadband. The strategic review is part of the expensive political exercise this Government has engaged in around the NBN. So far, the Minister for Communications has spent about $12 million appointing hand-picked mates to write various reports, giving him the answers he wants. He seems to have adopted Sir Humphrey Appleby's advice that one should never hold an inquiry unless they know what the answer will be. The latest of these reports is the cost-benefit analysis, the one that the Government promised before the election would be independently conducted by Infrastructure Australia. Instead, the Minister picked well-known critics of the NBN, Henry Ergus and Kevin Morgan, his former advisor Alex Robson and former Liberal Party staffer David Kennedy to write the so-called independent report. This report ludicrously concludes that 15 megabits per second will be sufficient for most businesses and households in 2023, dismissing the fact that already more than half of NBN Co's fibre customers are choosing speeds greater than this, and 28% are choosing plans of 50 megabits per second or greater. Even the CEO of NBN Co, Mr Bill Morrow, doesn't agree with this finding. On Radio National recently he said, "I suspect when they talk about 15 megabits per second being sufficient for people today, I think that likely is taking a snapshot in today's environment. What will tomorrow be? What will next year and the next decade require? I think is really the question." Let's not forget that when Mr Abbott appointed Mr Turnbull to the communications portfolio, he ordered him to demolish the NBN. So far he's done a good job of following that order. The NBN rollout is slower today under Minister Turnbull's watch than it was this time last year. Now, it's now almost a year, as I said, since Mr Turnbull was handed responsibility for the NBN. All we've had from him are political paybacks, broken promises, delays and jobs for the boys. And speaking about jobs for the boys, I'd like to bring to the attention of the Senate, just for those that might have missed it, the bonuses for the boys and contracts for the boys involved in NBN. And in the 10 weeks prior to the election, the NBN rollout was passing an average of 4,290 brownfield premises per week, and the 10-week average has now plummeted to 2,707 premises per week. So I want people to keep that in mind when I point out that it's been alleged, I think quite seriously, that the NBN Co has doubled its spending on advisory fees in the last year, and this is once again as a result of Mr Turnbull putting his mates in charge of a number of reviews focused on political payback. So the advisory fees have almost doubled in the last 12 months, and they're up $34.7 million. Now, if there really is a budget emergency or a budget crisis or whatever those on the other side are calling it today, I just fail to see how that can be the case. NBN co-executives in charge of the rollout of NBN have also been paid large bonuses, despite the fact that the NBN, as I said, is now rolling out so much slower than it was this time last year. And the key executive in charge of the negotiations with Telstra, funnily enough, was also awarded a bonus of $104,600. That was his bonus, despite the fact that this agreement is now more than 2 months late. They've awarded a contract to one of its own board members. They've, as I've said, they've made great political gains, been playing great political games, and I think it's high time that Mr Turnbull stopped playing those political games and started delivering the NBN that Australians want, need and deserve.
Thank you, Senator Billick. Senator Ruston.
Thank you, Mr President. I wasn't actually going to speak on this tonight, but having sat here and listened to the contribution of Senator Billick on the other side, I feel absolutely compelled to do so. The accusation and the many accusations that were made about the Minister and the NBN Co and the fact that this was a political exercise, I find really quite extraordinary, given that the Chamber has heard before. This actual NBN committee was set up in the most extraordinary way so that the committee could actually be quorate with only Labor Party members in the room. So we had the committee set up without the usual checks and balances that we come to respect in the Senate, Mr President. Then they decided they would hold hearings before the coalition had even had the opportunity to appoint senators to this committee. So the first few hearings were actually held with only Labor Party senators present. So, less political. This is accusing the Minister and the NBN of doing this politically. Then we had a situation where the interim report was handed down to us on the Friday afternoon to be tabled the following week. We spent the weekend looking through this report to get information and to make sure that we could have a sensible response to it, only to find on Monday morning, after spending our entire weekend doing this, a completely different report was given to us on the Monday morning. So I'd just like to draw the House's attention to the fact that to be accusing us of being politically motivated is a little bit rich. Secondly, there seems to be, I don't know what parallel universe that some other people in this chamber must be living in, but to be suggesting that what's happening now in terms of the rollout of the NBN is either A, worse than it was, or secondly, somehow now our fault when all we're trying to do is to clean up the mess of those that have gone before us, I think is really, really a bit rich. The thing that we're certainly trying to do is to make sure that the NBN that we deliver Australians is cheaper, faster, more affordable, and that we deliver it sooner. But unfortunately, with the constraints that we find ourselves in, the budgetary situation that we inherited from those opposite, it makes it extraordinarily difficult because we don't have the untold the credit card mentality. We believe we have to be responsible with the way we spend taxpayers' money. So I would suggest that Senator Billick should probably take a little bit more notice about what's actually going on out there on the ground. Maybe we should listen a little bit more to what the people are actually saying, and we should take a more balanced approach to how we're addressing the NBN. I unfortunately didn't realise that Senator Billick was going to get up tonight and to make the kind of accusations that she has about various aspects and the members of the NBN organisation, because I'd like the opportunity to respond to those. But I really do think it's extraordinarily rich that we have that kind of contribution when, to my mind, the only thing that this NBN committee is actually doing is allowing an opportunity for Senator Conroy to prosecute something that he failed terribly badly in delivering. So I'll leave it there, but I'll seek leave to continue my remarks.
Thank you, Senator Ruston. Any other